Hello everyone, how are you doing? This is Infinity Learn. I'm Mythili, your zoology faculty, back again with another beautiful zoology session. Today we are going to continue our human reproduction chapter, and the topic for the day is the menstrual cycle, right? Very important topic, guys. Every year in NEET, even before that in the PMTs, all the state entrance examinations, there was usually never a paper without a question from this particular lesson, human reproduction. Especially from human reproduction also, if you look at the stats, the number of questions that have appeared are more and more in number from this particular topic. So very important topic, not just the NEET point of view. I believe this is an important topic that all of us should be aware of. Every human being, we need to have a proper understanding of a natural phenomenon that is occurring in the human body, because you know that there are a lot of myths, superstitions associated with this particular natural phenomenon occurring in the women. So it's very important that we understand this particular topic, whether or not we are a biology students or preparing for the NEET examination. This is one topic I believe that all of us should have an understanding of, right? With that said, let's begin. So as I present the facts for every topic, here I wanted to, with this particular topic, wanted to break some myths that are around it. So with that, menstrual cycle repeats in exact same pattern. Now this is something even a lot of literate people also think of, like a lot of young girls also think it's coming on, the menstruation has occurred this month, say for example on the 15th, it is going to be around 15th the next month also on the exact same time period. It's not like that. It's usually not like that. The date pattern can change. In our NCERT text also, we talk about a 28-day reproductive cycle. It can, for some females, it can be a 30-day cycle, it can be a 40-day cycle. Not only that, it may vary. The date also might vary. It's not exactly a fixed pattern, right? And then it's not safe to use tampons, not at all, right? It's absolutely safe to use tampons during that of the menstruation. Shouldn't exercise during that period. One can go walking, jogging, swimming, can do all kind of physical activity during menstruation. There's absolutely unless you're very uncomfortable, there's over bleeding, there are too much of cramps and all. Otherwise it's absolutely okay to go ahead and perform any kind of physical activity, unless until you have various other inconveniences. Yes, of course, you should follow your physician as the doctor says, right? An absence of menstruation always indicates pregnancy. Now, this is another myth. A menstruation is not occurring in a particular month, immediately it indicates pregnancy. Not at all. Now, this can be due to stress or poor diet habits, or any reason can sometimes lead to lack of menstruation on a particular month. Yes, in pregnancy also there's lack of menstruation, but again definitely it's not always indicative of only pregnancy, okay? And girls or women are considered impure during menstruation. There are lots of things, especially in a country like ours, in various regions, various cultures, this is something that is considered impure. Some communities, they do not allow the young girls or women to wear new clothes during that point of time, or touch pickles, or not roam around freely at home. They're confined to a particular area where they need to take care of themselves. In Africa also, in certain tribes, they're actually living in outskirts during that of this particular menstruation is happening. So there are lots and lots of things culturally that have been imbibed. Maybe back then they had a set of reasons to do that. Now, with in a hygienic manner, using the sanitary pads, this can be managed. And one other thing is that it is not at all something that's impure. This is absolutely a natural phenomenon that is supposed to occur. once after the females reach the puberty till the menopause time period. It's a very, very healthy process that is indispensable in the women, right? So you cannot consider, girls who are undergoing this particular time period as impure or anything like that. So these are some of the facts I wanted to present before going into our topic. So first of all, let's understand the uterine wall. Yes, we did discuss female reproductive system at length. Now when you look at the uterine wall, okay, it has three different layers to it. There is endometrium. Endo, I've told a lot of times also, it's within. Metra is standing for, what does metra mean? We did discuss before also. Metra is nothing but uterus, right? Endo is within the uterus. It is the innermost layer. Now this is the layer we are talking about, which is sloughed off and shed as a 3-day bleeding, right? And then there is myometrium. What does myo say? Myo is basically standing for muscle. So it's the muscular layer. Myometrium is the middle layer. You can also remember M as in middle as well, and it is muscle as well. It's a muscular layer right in the middle. Very easy to remember because there are questions asked based on the layers of the uterine wall also, which is the glandular layer, endometrium, which is sloughed off and shed, which is the muscular layer which undergoes contractions during fetal ejection reflex. That would be the myometrium. And then peri. This is also, I keep telling that perimeter, it's the outer line, right, that you use in your geometry. Perimetrium, it's the outermost layer. So understand that there are three layers to the uterine wall: endometrium, myometrium and perimetrium. This endometrium is what we are specifically concerned with when it comes to the menstrual cycle, right? And then this endometrium, again you would have from the NCERT level understood that endometrium is something that is ruptured, sloughed off and shed, right? So here is what I'm throwing some light on it, that it is not the entire endometrium that is being sloughed off or shed. Endometrium again has two levels to it, which is stratum functionalis and stratum basalis. Stratum again is nothing but the layer, right? Basalis is at the base. Functionalis is one that is being rebuilt and sloughed off and all that. So there are two layers again to the endometrium. Functionalis is the one that is being sloughed off and shed during the menstruation, and this is the permanent layer that is not disturbed during menstruation. So when we say endometrium is sloughed off and shed, it's not the entire endometrium. So the menstrual cycle is something that's defined as a 28-day reproductive cycle that's taking place in the female primates, right? Again, there is estrous cycle also, you would have learnt in your botany part, right? And here comes some of the terminology that is very, very important. Menarche, the first menstruation during puberty, the first ever period that occurs in a female is what is called as menarche, right? Menstrual cycle, how do we define? I just told it's a 28-day reproductive cycle that's taking place in the female primates. And then we have menopause, which is the stoppage, right? Pause is something that's indicating, of course, that's a temporary stoppage. Here we are talking about the permanent stoppage, right? Stoppage of the menstrual cycle, which is around 50 years of age. Again, not very specific. We cannot for sure say it is only occurring at 50 years. There are people in whom there is early menopause that is occurring. There are people, in whom it is occurring some time point later. So it's generalized as around 50 years, right? So cyclic menstruation is something that's a healthy indicator during this particular reproductive fertile period. So what is this particular fertile period that we are observing in the females? It's the menarche, which is the first period, to the menopause, where the menstruation would stop, right? So, and another thing I want to make it very, very clear, which is not so clear again in our text, because NCERT is kind of a gist. We need to understand the layers beneath. We need to understand a little in depth, because not everything can be described in one particular textbook, right? So, when we say reproductive cycle, it's actually a combination of two things. What's happening in the ovary and what's happening in the uterus. So both these put together, we are referring it to as the female reproductive cycle. Very simple, again, to remember, what's happening in the ovary is called the ovarian cycle. What's happening in the uterus is the uterine cycle. So ovarian cycle and the uterine cycle put together, we are referring it to as the female reproductive cycle. There are changes that are taking place in the ovary as well as in the uterus, which is quite evident when you look at the diagram that is provided in the NCERT text. Look at this particular diagram. You are familiar with it, right? This is something that's there in your textbook. So from this you can understand what is happening in the ovary. This part is what is happening, where the follicles are growing, they are undergoing rupture, right? They are forming what is called as corpus luteum. And what's happening in the uterus, on the other hand, the endometrium is sloughed off and shed, and again it is being rebuilt, right? So the events that are occurring in the uterus is the uterine cycle. Events occurring in the ovary is what is called the ovarian cycle. A combination of these two is what we are referring to as the female reproductive cycle, right? So, I already told you that it's a combination of two things. Now, what are the different phases that are present in each of these cycles? If you look at the uterine cycle, there is a menstrual phase. Look at that particular menstrual phase here, right? We are going to talk about it a little more. And then comes the proliferative phase, okay? And then comes the secretory phase, right? So there is a menstrual phase, there is a proliferative phase, and there is a secretory phase that is taking place. And then we have the ovarian cycle, which is divided into three phases again, which is the follicular phase, ovulatory phase, and the luteal phase, which is the follicular phase, the ovulatory phase, and the luteal phase. So each of these phases are occurring simultaneously. There can be questions in comparison to these two also. So when the follicles are growing in the ovary, what is that? It is follicular phase. During then, what's happening in the uterus, there is the growth of the endometrium also, which is the proliferative layer, right? Here there is the, again the ovary has matured, it has broken, it has given the ovum, and it is forming what is called as the corpus luteum. So what do we call it here? Luteal phase. And it coincides with here the secretory phase, where the endometrium is fully grown. It's all ready to make that cozy bed for the fertilization for the human baby, just in case it is formed to rest upon, right? So these phases are occurring simultaneously. So you can co-link these also. It's very, very important that you correlate and study these cycles, right? So menstrual phase, what exactly is happening in the menstrual phase? It is the endometrium layer. Within endometrium layer, which is the layer I just told, which is actually sloughed off and shed, it's the stratum functionalis, right? The stratum functionalis is the layer which is undergoing the rupture, right, and is sloughed off and shed. So this is precisely what is happening in the menstrual phase. Now it's very, very important for us to understand the hormones that play an important role during the menstrual cycle. Which is the hormone that plays a very, very important role for the rupture, slough and shed of the endometrium layer? As soon as the progesterone, which is the ovarian hormone, right, the level goes down. So the progesterone level is fallen down. This fall in the progesterone concentration, that is what is causing the menstruation. So when we say menstruation, what's exactly physical sign that is observed? This bleeding that is taking place, right? This endometrium is a mix of the, these blood clots, there is serous fluid, all this which is, pushed through the uterus, through the vaginal orifice and is being shed out as a 3-day menstrual bleeding. So again, this is not something that is harmful to the human body. It's an absolutely natural process about which 40 ml of the blood and even 35 or so more ml of the serous fluid is being lost. So all over of the 3 days is about this much of blood that is being lost in menstruation. Of course, there are cases where there is over bleeding also that is occurring, but generally in a normal healthy person is what we are talking about. So there's a fall in the progesterone level. Now this is a very, very important hormone for maintaining the endometrium. Once this happens, this is going to undergo rupture, it's sloughed off and shed, and it in the form of the vaginal bleeding. It is also maintained in a liquid form so that it doesn't form the clots, which is the fibrinolysin, which is the enzyme that is responsible for maintaining it in the fluid form or in the liquid form. So this is the enzyme that is helping with, maintaining it in a liquefied form, right? So that is what is happening in the menstrual phase. So usually this is something that's occurring if at all fertilization doesn't occur. This ovum that's waiting for the sperm to come and fertilize it. In case it's not fertilized, that's when the corpus luteum that is formed, that is undergoing degeneration. That's the source for progesterone. The progesterone level falls down, and that's what is leading to the rupture of the the endometrium or the stratum functionalis in particular, right? It is due to the declining levels of the progesterone as well as estrogen. Then there is the prostaglandins also that are involved in constricting the spiral arterioles. Look at this beautiful picture. Look at these spiral arterioles. What is happening to these? There are, along with this fallen progesterone as well as the estrogen, the prostaglandins that are activated, they constrict these. So what is constriction? It is decreasing the diameter of these blood vessels. So what happens when constriction occurs? To the stratum functionalis, there is no oxygen supply that is happening, right? So there is no oxygen supply, it's deprived of the oxygen. So what is happening to this particular layer? That is what is being sloughed off and shed. Beautiful, amazing mechanism that we have, right? Now the follicular phase. So as I said, in the ovary, what is happening? The follicles are undergoing the growth. You can see the decrease in the, the increase in the size that you see. It's a straight NCRT diagram. Look at that primary follicle forming the secondary follicle, the tertiary follicle and the metagraphian follicle. So what is happening? There is a growth in the follicles, which is the follicular phase. So how is this happening? This fall in progesterone, right? So there's nothing to inhibit the release of FSH or that of the LH, because there's a negative feedback mechanism that's involved there. So which is the hormone that's coming into the picture now? The FSH and also LH. What are these hormones? The pituitary hormones. Unlike progesterone, estrogen, which are secreted by ovary, these are the pituitary hormones. So follicle stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone. Look at this particular level that is raising here, right? So this is what is responsible for the growth of the follicles. There was this question in the previous NEET examination. Why is that the follicles are not growing during the menstrual phase? That's because FSH and LH are at very, very low levels. Nice indirect question which requires your understanding of the concept, right? So the FSH and LH are increasing in concentration, which is causing the growth of the follicles. The LH especially is, going to the peaks, which is what is referred to as LH surge. Look at that ovulatory phase. So this is also your straight NCERT diagram. Look at that ovum being released. What is this particular phase or the process called ovulation? Release of ovum. Very, very simple definition to understand and remember. Release of ovum is what is called as ovulation. So this ovulation is something that is caused by LH specifically. Yes, FSH is also helping with the growth of the follicles. LH especially suddenly increases in the concentration. It is attaining peak, which is what is defined as LH surge, right? LH surge. This is what is causing the rupture of the Graafian follicle. Look at that particular follicle that's formed here, right? The mature follicle. This is going to undergo rupture because of this LH hormone and is what is causing the release of the ovum. So when does this ovulation take place? Yes, in the NCERT again it is mentioned as the mid-cycle. So of 28 days you are taking it as 14, but don't be misguided there. The luteal phase is something which is constant, 14. So if at all you are given a number of days in the reproductive cycle, you need to subtract 14, and that's how you predict or calculate the ovulation day, right? So another very, very beautiful diagram for you to understand. First, there is high levels of estrogen from the mature follicle. The Graafian follicle is a mature follicle which starts secreting this very high levels of estrogen, which is what is enabling the hypothalamus to secrete the GnRH, which is stimulating the production of LH, luteinizing hormone, which comes back and causes that particular rupture or release, LH surge. Very, very important definition, right? So the luteal phase. What happens exactly in the luteal phase? The Graafian follicle has ruptured, it has released the ovum. What will happen to the rest of the layers involved in the follicle? There's a lot of granulosa layers around it, right? We did discuss oogenesis before. So what is happening to the remains of these or the remnants of the Graafian follicle? They are forming what is called as corpus luteum. Corpus is a body, luteum is referring to a yellowish pigment. It is yellow endocrine gland, which is temporary, which is what is secreting this high levels of the progesterone hormone. It's a very, very important source of the progesterone. Estrogen also is something that is being secreted by it, but very high levels of the progesterone is what is secreted by corpus luteum, which is what is building up that endometrium, causing that secretory phase in the uterine cycle, right? So once if the ovum is not fertilized, okay, the endometrium has prepared itself just in case fertilization happens, just in case zygote comes and implants itself in the endometrium, but nothing happened, no fertilization. So this endometrium is now again going to slough and break down and is coming out as the vaginal bleeding, right? So different menstrual disorders which may be a little beyond, but good for our understanding. Dysmenorrhea is pain along with menstruation. Amenorrhea, A stands for absence, I did tell you before also, so it's complete absence of the menstruation. Menorrhagia, heavy menstrual bleeding. Even in reproductive health chapter, we talk about what is called as a lactational amenorrhea. Again there, during lactation also menstruation doesn't occur, which is what is called the same term, right? So the menstrual hygiene, these are all the statements that I took straight from your NCERT text. It's very, very important for each and every female to understand. That's important to clean, use very clean pads, not use any of these cloths which are not so good. Even if it is homemade, a proper washed clean cloth should be used. right? So the cleanliness is quite important. Keeping that genital area in a very hygienic manner is also quite important, which may otherwise lead to a lot of infections. Generally, you also know that females are more prone to the infections, right? To sum this all up, what did we learn today? That it's a 28-day reproductive cycle that's taking place in the female primates. There are changes that are taking place in the ovary, which are the ovarian cycle, the changes that is taking place in the uterus, which is the uterine cycle. Put together, it's the reproductive cycle. The menstrual phase is where there is a 3-day bleeding, there's very low levels of progesterone which is causing it, and then there is a proliferative phase or the follicular phase. The follicles are undergoing growth under the influence of FSH and LH. Ovulatory phase is where there is a rupture of the Graafian follicle, ova is being released, and then there is a luteal or the secretory phase where finally the corpus luteum that is formed from the remains of the Graafian follicle is again secreting progesterone for the buildup of the endometrium. If ovum is fertilized, yes, progesterone is going to maintain that endometrium, which is why it's called the pregnancy hormone. Ovum is not fertilized, the levels fall down, and it leads to the next cycle, which is the menstrual cycle. So that's that small quiz that we do on the present topic. Which hormone is responsible for the release of ovum? Straight and simple, we did discuss just now also. Mainly it is the LH, luteinizing hormone. Which of the following hormones is secreted by corpus luteum? Mainly, that it has to be a mainly because estrogen is also secreted by it. It is progesterone which is mainly secreted by it. No new follicles develop in the luteal phase because there is no or very low FSH and LH. FSH is what is responsible for growth of follicle. It's not in high concentrations during the menstrual phase, which is why they are not growing. Define menarche. It's the first period. To put it in a very simple flashcard like manner for you to understand what's menarche, it's the first period. A woman having 45-day menstrual cycle ovulates on. How do we calculate the ovulation? The constant luteal phase is the number of days that we are going to subtract. It is 45 days minus 14, it would be 31. So 31st day is when you will observe that there is the ovulation that is occurring, right? That's that small quiz for you. Keep learning, keep having fun, and at the same time, in case you're enrolling for our courses in the Infinity Learn, you get that discount if at all you use the coupon code Mythili 40. Very easy code to remember, MYTHILI 4040. If at all you're using this coupon code, you get a 40% discount. That's very high discount on our courses. So do subscribe and do register for our courses which are offered by elite lecturers. They are doing great job coaching people. They've done it in the past, they're doing it at present, helping more and more students to become the doctors and world-class engineers and the doctors, right? So do log on to Infinity Learn, do subscribe, like and share the YouTube videos. Very happy learning. Here it is Infinity Learn, where the learning should be infinite and fun. Thank you all.